In this video, I'm going to talk about CIS18A Lab 4 Exercise 4. In this exercise, we're required to create a Java program that uses method overloading concept, given P is 30, Q is 50, and R is 70. And we are to complete 4 overloads of the method. The first overload will return the product for P times Q. Second overload return the product for Q times R. Third overload return the product of P times R. And fourth overload return the product for P times Q times R. So to begin, we will start with our text editor. And in our text editor, I had stated the comment for the program information. Then first, I had included the class OVLD for overload. The first overload, we would use type int. So we would have the method prod for product. And in the parameter, I would pass parameter for the variable P and Q, int P and int Q. Then I would return P times Q. For the second overload, I want to use double type because in Java, we cannot repeat the same type when you're using the same amount of variable in the parameter. So in the second overload, I chose to use double, and double prod is the method. Then we want to use double Q and double R for the parameter here. And we want to return Q times R. Third overload, we're going to use long. And here we want to specify the type long prod. And in the parameter, we want to include the integer type long P and long R to find the product for P times R. In the fourth overload, we're using 3 parameter variables. So we can use int, so int prod, and in here I would put int P, int Q, int R, and I want to return the P times Q times R. Under the main function, I create the new object. So I bring down the class name. I specify the object name, which is OB. I have the constructor to create the object. Then to call the overload, we simply do a system println method. And we state that the first overload for the product. And here I would implement the value for P and Q. And in the second overload, I again update the value for Q and R. And notice that I'm using the object name along with the method for the call. And then for the third overload, again, I will update the value 30 and 70 for Q and R. And then lastly, I would implement the 3 values for the parameter to multiply P, Q, and R. So after we create this program, we want to save it as the class name. So here I would choose to put it on desktop, and I simply name it the same as the class name. Once I save the file, I can then go into my command line, change my directory to desktop, and I would compile the Java program. Once the program is successfully compiled, I would run it. Since I'm only using one class, I can just simply operate it from that class, and it would show me the first overload is 1500, second overload is 3500, fourth overload is 2100, and the third overload is 2100, and the fourth overload is 105,000. So to go back to our code, just to recap, I began with specifying the class, declaring the class. Under this class, I have the method for P times Q. And then again, since we're using int here, we want to change it up and use double for the second overload for Q times R. So that's in the parameter there, and we want to return Q times R there. And for the third overload, I use long, and in the parameter, I specify the variable that I want to implement. Fourth overload, we want to use 3 parameter as the program requires. In the second part, I create the object, and using that object with the method, I would pass the value in the parameter to do the calculations and use that for the call. So in this program, what we had is we have 4 overload processes for our method and be able to compile the program. And as you can see, we have the result here.